Good afternoon, family. This is the Talented 10th Financial Coach Jay coming back at you with some more content on today. We had spoken with you the last session about using the Roth IRA. We went back to the Roth IRA for a minute just to give you some concrete numbers. We talked about the two gentlemen in their scenario, John and you had James. John started investing $500 a month for 10 years, contributing into his Roth IRA a total of $60,000 at 10% compound growth. That money turned out to be after the 10th year, and he's going to stop and just let it compound for the next 30 years from the age of 30 to the age of 60 and just watch that money grow. But at the end of that 10th year of him investing $5,000 at 10% of rate of return, John ended up with $95,000. And we know it was some change on that. So his friend James said, I'm going to live life. I'm going to spend all that extra $500 that you working hard to contribute to your Roth IRA, and I'll just wait until I'm 30 years old. So James decided to do the same $500 a month for the next 30 years. Now remember, John submitted into his account, into his future self, from the age of 20 to the age of 30, a total of $60,000. And he stopped. And he said, I'm going to watch this money compound. He said, because I heard the financial coach Jay saying, the Talented 10 financial coach Jay saying in a seminar that Einstein said compound interest is the 8th greatest wonder of the world. Why did he say that? Because you got time and compounding on your side. He says this is what Einstein said, and he remembered Coach Jay saying this. He said that Einstein said those who understands it earns it, talking about compound interest, and those who don't pay it. Let's see how in a way that James paid it, because he didn't operate in it. He knew about it. It's something to know something, but it's another thing to operate in wisdom, and that's doing what you know. So James, once again, let's go back to James. We already got John's scenario. He's at $95,000 at 30 years old. It's $95,624.55 to be exact. Whoever wants to go back and fact check me. At 10% compound growth. Now we're using that because he's in an S&P 500 index fund, and that's what it's been drawn over since about 1957 when they start tracking it. It's about 10.47 to be exact, is what they're saying on the average. And now we know the market goes up and down. But I'm going to tell you, for the last 4 or 5 years during this pandemic, all of my S&P 500 index funds, or just the index funds, total stock market, they've been drawing no less. All of them, even went into the little down market, I think a couple of years ago. They have been drawing anywhere between 30 and 35%. And when it was in the down market, I think it dropped down to maybe 20% compound growth. All I know is it works. All right. So James, here we are with James, $500 a month. He's going to do it from the age of 30 to the age of 60 with this same rate of return of 10%, assuming that he's in the same index fund as John chose. At the end of that 30-year period of him doing $500 a month, he ended up with $986,964.14. Sounds significant, right? However, let's jump over here to John, who stopped at the age of 30. He did it for 10 years, $500 a month, 10% rate of return. He did it for 10 years and he stopped. Now he's just letting that money compound. At the age of 30, it was $95,624.55. And now this money, he's just letting it do his thing and compound, talking about doing what Einstein said, because he understood it. He understood just a little bit of what Coach Jay was talking about. He said, now I'm going to apply wisdom. Wisdom is acting on what you believe and what you know. So at the end of that once he reached 60 years old, just like James, they were all the same age when going in, and one took action, the other waited, delayed. He delayed, and James, the first gentleman, his money grew to $1,668,591.24, and that's without him contributing another dime after the 10-year period that he was contributing $500 a month. And he did this by driving part-time Uber or Lyft. He said, I'm gonna just go ahead, and I got this car, so I might as well put this car to use. I might as well make this car make me money. And let me say this to you. In order to contribute, the max you can contribute in the year of 2024 into your Roth IRA, for anyone under the age of 50, the max you can contribute is $7,000. If you're 50 and above, and you're making, once again, you got to be able to make at least that much money to contribute. If you made $6,000, you can't contribute $7,000 into your Roth IRA. You can only contribute up to what you make. So you make $10,000, you contribute $7,000, and of course you can, you got $3,000 left for that year to eat on, I guess. But we're just using it as an example. So of course, both of these gentlemen, they were making more than that. We're assuming they were making more than that. So you got one gentleman after 10 years, and then letting that money grow for the next 30 years, $1,668,591.24. The next gentleman who delayed participating because he chose to do something else, which is perfectly fine. Personal finances, they're personal. But his end goal, even though he invested a total of his money, $180,000, and he still didn't catch up. His money ended up being $986,964.14. All right, so there you go. One gentleman contributed $60,000, and the other gentleman contributed 3 times, $180,000, 3 times more than the first gentleman, because the first gentleman, John, started early and he even stopped. While James, once he started, he continued to invest that money for 30 years. Now let's talk about the rule of thumb for withdrawing this money once they reach 60. Now remember, both of these gentlemen into the Roth IRA, so guess what? All that money, all that compound growth, interest, dividends, all of that they pull out at the age of 60, 59 and a half is really the policy, the rule that has been set in place by Congress. 59 and a half, you can draw that money out. Of course, they've been in it over 5 years. You draw that money out, compound interest, growth-free interest, no penalty, because they're 59 and a half. So they start pulling this money out. Now let's look at the big difference. This is where it really counts. So if we use the 4% rule of thumb, generally speaking, this was done by the Trinity study, and this is worst case scenario when they was talking about this study. This coming from the Trinity study. 4%. They use different Monte Carlo simulations and all of that. So the worst case scenario, you pull 4% off your money, and for the next 30 years, I think that it was a 30-year time period. They were assuming people were going to probably live until they, 30 years after they retire. So most people retire around 65 years old, say a 30-year period, 95. And they said, if this person pulls out 4% of their money every year, regardless of what the market is doing, because the market goes up and down, that money would generally not run out. That's what the studies talked about. Okay, so let's do it. 4%. So let's do 4% on 1.6. We just rounded down. So $66,000. It's actually $66,000, for John that he can pull out every year, $66,743.64 to be exact. So we're just going to round that down to $66,000. Let's say once he turns 62, he start pulling off his Social Security income. And we're going to assume that he's getting about $2,000 a month, $24,000 a year. So a total he's able to draw out. Remember, $66,000 of that money is coming from his Roth at the 4% rule of thumb withdrawal rate. Withdrawal, not rate. And the money is still growing. The money is still growing. So if he's pulling out 4%, once again, and inflation is 3%, 3% of that money is still compounding on that principal, and on the growth of all of that is still in the account. All right. And if he's in an index fund, they're only getting 0.0. Say we're in S&P 500 under Vanguard, you're only getting about 0.03% that's going to the fees to manage the money, because it's an index fund. So he's winning. They're winning. They're both winning. So he pulls out $66,000. We round it down. He gets $24,000 from his Social Security income, because he's got all the 40 credits that he needs, units that he needs, because he's been working all this time. And he's getting $90,000. But guess what? $66,000 of it is not even taxed. When you start dealing with Medicare and all those different things, Social Security tax. So if he's getting taxed on $24,000, Social Security will only right now, current law, they will only tax you up to $85,000. But because his income is so low, he's probably not going to pay any income tax, because he's probably going to get about, when you go under the marginal tax rate, he's going to get $14,000 or so off of the $24,000. He's not going to pay any taxes. Now let's move over to James. James, his 4% rule of thumb withdrawal, $39,478.56. So we're just going to round that down to $39,000. Okay, he's going to pull off, once again, they kind of working the same jobs. He's pulling off $24,000 from Social Security. His total income for not doing anything, passive income, is $63,000. That's not bad. That's not bad at all either. But you got one guy getting $90,000, almost $100,000, and one gentleman getting $63, all because the first gentleman, John, chose to start his investment. He earmarked his goal, and we don't know what the tax rates are going to be later on, but they both stopped their tax rate from going up if it chooses to go up later, because they both did index funds in their Roth IRA, tax-free money for the rest of their life. And whatever money they have left over, guess what? It'll go to their beneficiaries. Come on, family, we got to build this black wealth. This is too easy. This is too easy. The average car payment nowadays is probably about anywhere between $750 and probably $1,000, depending on the type of vehicle that you're trying to get brand new. Most people want to get a brand new vehicle every 4 or 5 years. If we just delay, like I told you guys about my vehicle that's 23 years old, and I started investing that money, that car payment, into myself, my future self, really is for my great grandbabies now, because the grandbabies got their own legacy fund going. But this is now saying I want to put $35,000 as soon as I get my first great grandbaby, and put that into a brokerage account, because they're not old enough to work yet to go into the Roth. And then of course you can only put right now $7,000 under the age of 50 into your Roth per year, and they probably won't be I would hope that whoever have the first grandbaby will start a business. That way we can start them in a Roth, just taking pictures and getting money in there now. But if not, brokerage account, let that money sit for the next 50 years, $35,000. Somebody do the math on it for me. And that's a one-time deal. And my goal is to do it for each of my grandbabies as long as I live. Great grandbabies, not grandbabies. They already got stuff. But great grandbabies. This is building generational wealth on top of generational wealth. This is easy. And we need to look at all the tax benefits that we can get out of these situations. But this is Grandpa sitting back here on his back porch just spitballing this, and we're going to make this happen for generations to come because we're already taken care of. All right, family, talk to you later.